The email offering my twins the summer of their dreams felt like a threat the second I saw their father's last name in the subject line. 15 years ago, that man walked out when I told him I was pregnant now. My twins' future might depend on the camp he owns, and there is no way to undo this once I say yes. They'll spend 3 weeks laughing with a billionaire who doesn't know he's their father, and they'll come home with an opinion about him long before they know the truth. If you're a woman who's ever swallowed your pain so your children wouldn't lose a chance, you're going to feel this in your bones. Stay with me, because the moment he finally looks into their faces and realizes who they are will make you rethink what justice and second chances really look like. The email arrived at 6:12 p.m., right between stirring the tomato sauce and telling my twins for the third time that the music was too loud for the neighbors. At first, I thought it was just another polite rejection, another "we regret to inform you" I'd have to swallow before I called their names and pretended it didn't sting. But this subject line was different. Congratulations. Forest Ridge Summer Program, acceptance letter inside. Forest. My hand hovered over the trackpad. The kitchen, with its humming fridge and flickering overhead light, suddenly felt smaller, like the air itself had thickened. One word, and 15 years of carefully packed away memories shifted in their boxes. "Mom, did we get in?" Mark's voice shot down the hallway just before his lanky body appeared, followed closely by Kelly's quick footsteps. They were always like that, him a step ahead, her half a breath behind, moving as if they shared one nervous system. "Hold on," I said, though my voice came out thinner than I meant. I clicked the email. "Dear Ms. Barbara, we are delighted to inform you that your children, Mark and Kelly Barbara, have been accepted into the Forest Ridge Summer Camp. Their names look so official there, wrapped in the kind of opportunity kids like mine rarely got close to." I should have been grinning, calling them over, reading every word out loud. Instead, my eyes dropped straight to the bottom of the message, searching. There it was. A logo in deep green, Forest Ridge Foundation, and under it in smaller print, founded by James Forrest. For a moment, everything blurred the simmering sauce, the chipped counter, even my own hands on the laptop. 15 years, and 2 words could still knock the breath out of me. "Mom?" Kelly stepped closer, curls piled into a messy bun, a smudge of blue paint clinging to her thumb. "You're scaring me. Did we not get in?" Her eyes hazel, too observant for 15, searched my face. His eyes, the same shape, the same way they narrowed when she worried. "You got in," I said, forcing a smile. "Both of you." They exploded. Mark let out a whoop that rattled the cabinet doors, grabbing Kelly in a half-hug, half-tackle. She squealed, smacked his arm, then threw both hands in the air like she'd just won something on live TV. "I told you," Mark said. "Coach said my essay about fixing the broken court would stand out." Kelly rolled her eyes. "Your essay had 3 typos and the handwriting of a tired raccoon. They saw my portfolio, and your name just happened to be in the same email." "You're welcome." "Wow," Mark said. The disrespect in this home. Their bickering bounced off the walls, familiar and loud. They were 15 too big for our small apartment, too grown for my old car, and somehow still young enough to believe that a camp could change everything. If you're listening to this and you've ever had that moment smiling at your kids while your stomach is sinking, just know you're not alone. Some of us learn to hold joy and dread in the same breath. If that's you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever hidden your fear so your family could keep their excitement? "Mom, read it," Kelly insisted, tugging at my sleeve. "What's it like? Cabins, lake? Do they have one of those ropes courses where people pretend not to be scared?" "They absolutely have ropes courses," Mark said. I checked the brochure. Tree times. I dragged my eyes back to the top and made myself red like a normal mother. I told them about the cabins nestled in the trees, the sparkling lake, the leadership programs, the climbing wall. Every sentence felt like I was standing in 2 places at once, here in my cramped kitchen and back in another life, before I learned what survival really meant. "They have an art studio," I added. "Kelly, they've got a whole building just for that." Her face softened. "Really?" "And sports facilities," I said. "Basketball courts, Mark. Real ones that aren't cracked down the middle." Mark tried to keep his face neutral and failed. "Okay, that's pretty cool." In the middle of their glow, another thought slipped in, quiet and sharp. At the bottom of the email, the green logo waited like a trap. Forest Ridge, founded by James Forrest. If you've ever had a name trigger more memories than you're ready to handle, you know what that moment feels like. The whole world keeps moving, but inside, everything stops. Mom, Mark said slowly. You're doing that staring thing. I'm just thinking, I said. Thinking usually means no, Kelly replied, narrowing her eyes. Please don't say no. I will do dishes for a month. I will clean the bathroom. I will even... Okay, I won't clean under Mark's bed. I'm not that brave, but I'll do basically anything else. I almost laughed. Almost. I'm not saying no, I managed. I just need an hour. They groaned in unison. An hour, Mark protested. The spots are limited. That's like a lifetime in email time. Go, I said, waving them off. Argue about who gets top bunk. Start planning your outfits. Give me 60 minutes. They exchanged that twin look, the one that lasts half a second but holds a full conversation, then crashed into me with a hug that smelled like laundry detergent and adolescence. Thank you, Kelly murmured into my shoulder. You don't even know if I said yes, I pointed out. You're thinking about it, Mark said. That's step one. When they disappeared back down the hall, their voices already blending into another argument, the apartment felt strangely quiet. On the screen, the acceptance email still glowed. Forest Ridge. Founded by James Forrest. If this story is touching something in you already, this push and pull between wanting better for your kids and wanting to protect your own heart, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't lose it in your feed. These are the kinds of stories we walk through here, slowly, one hard choice at a time. I click the attached brochure. Smiling teenagers in matching shirts, arms slung over each other's shoulders. A lake that looked like glass at sunrise. Cabins tucked among tall pines. And then, near the bottom, a photo that knocked the air out of me. A group of campers held certificates, faces bright with the kind of pride I recognized. Beside them stood a man in a dark polo, sleeves rolled up, hair shorter than I remembered, but there. James. Older. The boyishness smoothed out, replaced by a steadier sort of confidence. Silver threaded at his temples, laugh lines at the corners of his mouth. He looked like a man who had built things and watched them stand. Once upon a time, I'd loved that determined glint in his eyes. I hadn't realized it could cut both ways. I remembered the coffee shop, the smell of burnt espresso, the way his fingers had hovered over his laptop keys when I said the word late, and then the word pregnant. I remembered his answer. I'm not ready for this. I can't be tied down right now. Back then, those words had split my life into before and after. Now, he was on my screen, under the words founder and visionary, and my children had just been given a golden ticket straight into his world. What would you do? I whispered into the empty kitchen, if the opportunity your kids needed was sitting in the hands of the man who walked away from you? I thought of Martha, of the nights she'd watch the twins while I worked doubles, of her practical voice in my head, fear doesn't pay tuition, Joyce. It just shrinks the map. Anyone in my position would have felt the same war inside. Protect yourself, or open a door for them. I scrolled to the bottom of the email. A big friendly button waited there. Con mayamano. MENT, my finger hovered over the trackpad. If I said no, I kept our lives small, controllable, safe. If I said yes, I drove them straight toward a man who didn't know they existed. Okay, I whispered. This is for them. I clicked. Enrollment confirmed, the screen replied. We look forward to welcoming Mark and Kelly to Forest Ridge. I leaned back in the creaky kitchen chair, heart pounding. I had just chosen their future over my fear. And I had no idea what that decision was about to cost all of us. The morning we left for camp, the confirmation email was still open on my phone, like evidence I could neither deny nor undo. Mom, if we don't leave in 10 minutes... I'm staging a protest, Mark called from the hallway. I am not walking into orientation late. That's villain behavior. Relax, Kelly said. Being late is our family aesthetic. I slipped the phone into my pocket, turned off the kettle, and did my usual inventory. Keys, wallet, phone, I murmured, touching each one on the counter. Snacks, water, emotional stability. 2 out of 4 isn't bad. If you've ever packed a car while packing down your feelings at the same time, you know that mechanical rhythm, the way your hands keep moving so your heart doesn't have to. Kelly appeared first, dragging a duffel that had seen better days. She doodled tiny suns and moons on the strap with a silver marker, turning a hand-me-down into something that felt like hers. Be honest, she said. Do I look like someone who belongs at a fancy camp or like a lost extra who wandered off a music video set? You look like my daughter, I said, which means you'll be the most interesting person there. She grinned and bumped my hip with her bag. Mark followed, basketball under one arm, duffel on the other shoulder. "Shotgun," he declared, already halfway to the door. "You called shotgun 3 days ago," Kelly complained. "Consistency," he said. "It's one of my strengths." We hauled the bags to the car, the familiar weight of them oddly comforting. Our old sedan waited at the curb, paint chipped, a faint rattle in the engine when it idled. It had carried us through school drop-offs and late-night grocery runs. Now it was about to carry us 3 hours toward a past I thought I'd left behind. Everybody buckled. I asked as I slid behind the wheel. "Yes," they chorused. "Good," I said. No turning back then. We pulled away from the curb, the neighborhood rolling past in familiar snapshots misses. Turner's flower pots, the corner store with the crooked open sign, the cracked sidewalk Mark used as his first court. The twins immediately went to war over the music. "My playlist first," Mark said. "We need something with a beat. This is a life-changing road trip, not a meditation retreat." "My playlist has feelings," Kelly argued. "Yours has sound effects." "We alternate," I said. "No one traumatizes the driver." They grumbled but agreed, and within minutes the car filled with bass and lyrics, then guitars and soft voices that made me want to roll the windows down, even though the AC was doing its best. Behind the banter, my hands stayed a little too tight on the wheel. Kelly noticed first. "You're quiet," she said, leaning forward between the seats. "Quiet, quiet. Not just Mom is concentrating on not hitting potholes quiet. I'm focusing on the road," I said. "It's a straight highway," Mark replied. "Even a squirrel with a license could manage this." "You're very confident for someone who still forgets his gym socks," I shot back. He smirked, but his eyes flicked over my face, reading more than I wanted him to see. "You're not regretting it, are you?" he asked. "The camp, because we're like 10 miles from no return." I looked at both of them, their faces full of hope, nervousness, the hunger for something bigger than our usual summer. "No," I said softly. "I'm not regretting it. I'm just thinking about how big this is. For you. For all of us." The city thinned out behind us, buildings shrinking into distant shapes. Trees took their place, lining the highway in long green stretches. I tried to focus on the ordinary details. The way Mark tapped out rhythms on his knee when he liked a song. The way Kelly mouthed lyrics while staring out the window, already turning them into pictures in her head. But my mind kept slipping backward. To James. To the first time I'd seen him in a noisy college kitchen, holding court about code and funding and disrupting the market with the same intensity most people reserved for birthday parties. To the way he'd looked at me like I was the calm in his hurricane, right up until I told him I was carrying his child. "I'm not ready for this. I can't be tied down right now." The memory felt so vivid I almost checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see my younger self in the back seat, scared and stubborn. "Penny for your thoughts," Kelly said. "You don't have that many pennies," I replied. She nudged my shoulder. "Come on, tell us." "You're not allowed to keep them all to yourself all the time." I considered lying, saying I was thinking about bills, or traffic, or whether I remembered to turn off the stove. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "about how sometimes life brings things back around when you least expect it, and how that can be good and scary at the same time." "That's vague," Mark noted. "Welcome to adulthood," I said. They laughed, but the heaviness in my chest didn't lift. We stopped once for gas and snacks at a small station that smelled like coffee and sugar and the faint rubber of too many tires. Inside, the twins scattered immediately. Mark went straight to the sports drinks and energy bars, studying the labels like he was coaching his own metabolism. Kelly gravitated toward the small rack of postcards and cheap notebooks, fingers running over glossy photos of lakes and mountains. I watched them from the coffee station, a flimsy cup warming my hands. They had no idea that on the other end of this drive, the man on the brochure wasn't just a successful stranger. He was the missing name on their birth certificates, the gap in every father's name line I'd had to fill out alone. If this is stirring something in you about people who left and the children who grew up anyway, go ahead and share this video with someone who gets it. Sometimes we don't have the words ourselves, but a story says what our hearts have been trying to. Back in the car, the miles fell away. Ninety miles. 70, 53. The trees grew taller, thicker, leaning toward the road as if they had secrets they wanted to whisper. "You know what I'm excited about," Kelly said at one point. "The idea of being somewhere new where nobody already decided who we are." "With our luck," Mark answered, "we'll still end up being the twins." There are worse things to be, she said softly. She meant it. They had built their own little universe, the two of them. I had done my best to keep that universe safe, even when my own felt like it was collapsing. You know what I'm excited about? Mark added. Courts that don't have cracks from one end to the other. I might cry. Please don't cry on the first day, I said. We just got you to 15 without that reputation. Are you going to miss us? Kelly asked suddenly. Like really miss us? Or are you secretly planning 3 weeks of glorious silence? Both can be true, I said. I'll miss you so much it will hurt. And I will also enjoy a sink that doesn't fill up with cups like you're running a science experiment. She grinned. At least you're honest. Honesty. That word hit me harder than it should have, because as much as I loved them, as much as I'd sacrificed, there was one place I hadn't been honest. I hadn't told them that the man whose name was on their camp banner was the same man who had once looked at me and chosen his own future over theirs. Mom, Mark said, breaking the silence, you're doing that breathing thing again. What breathing thing? I asked. The one where you inhale like you're about to say something big, Kelly said, and then you don't. They noticed everything. I forced a slow exhale. I'm just proud of you, I said. That's all. You worked hard to get this spot. It wasn't handed to you. Yeah, well, Mark said lightly, we had a good coach. He didn't mean basketball. I swallowed around the tightness in my throat. If you're a mom or a grandmother listening to this, and you've ever felt both proud and terrified watching your kids walk toward something new, hit like so this story keeps reaching women like you. You're the ones who understand the cost behind every congratulations. Eventually, the highway narrowed into a smaller road. The GPS announced a turn in a calm voice that didn't match my heart rate. We passed a sign. Forest Ridge, 10 miles. Kelly pressed her forehead to the glass. It looks different already, she said. Like the kind of place in books where people find out who they really are. Or where the killer shows up, Mark added. Can you not? I said. I have enough going on. We took the turn. Trees arched overhead now, leaves filtering the sunlight into shifting patterns on the hood of the car. The air looked greener somehow. Cleaner. As we rounded a bend, a wooden archway came into view. Forest Ridge, carved into the beams, stood over a wide gravel drive. Cars lined the edges, kids spilled out with bags and pillows and nerves. Counselors in matching shirts waved clipboards like flags. I slowed, pulling into the flow. Whoa, Mark breathed. This is way nicer than the website made it look. I know, Kelly whispered. Hit Fielch. Big, it is big, I said. They thought I meant the camp. I knew better. We followed the line of cars until we found a slot near the main lodge. When I turned off the engine, the sudden silence inside the car made me aware of my own heartbeat. You ready? I asked. No, Kelly said. Yes, maybe, depends. Same, Mark replied. We stepped out into air that smelled like pine needles and sunscreen and lake water. Sound rushed in laughing, calling, the thud of someone dropping a heavy suitcase. The lodge stood ahead, wood and stone and wide windows catching the light. And there, near its entrance, shaking hands with a couple and smiling like he belonged to every part of this place, stood James. He was older, broader through the shoulders, his hair shorter with silver at the temples the magazines loved to call distinguished. But I would have known him anywhere. Okay, this is epic, Mark said, oblivious. This looks like one of those catalog places rich kids brag about. Look at that guy, Kelly added, nodding toward the lodge. He looks like he owns the world. He, my voice caught. He owns the camp. We walked toward the lodge, gravel crunching under our feet, the sun too bright, the air too sharp for how small I suddenly felt. A woman in a teal camp shirt intercepted us with a practiced smile and a clipboard held like a shield. Hi! Welcome to Forest Ridge, she said. Himamanda, you must be the Barbaras? Yes, I managed. This is Mark and Kelly. Perfect. She checked a line. You two are in Pineview 3. Top-notch cabin. You'll meet your counselor in a minute. Kelly leaned forward, eyes already roaming. Is there really a lake? Or was that Photoshop? Amanda laughed. Real lake. Real cold in the mornings. You'll love it. Mark took in the climbing wall in the distance, the kids running drills with a counselor, the easy way everyone seemed to already know what to do. This place is insane, he said. In a good way. It's a lot, I agreed. It was more than a lot. Because a few yards away, James finished talking to the couple he'd been greeting and turned toward the next family toward us with a polite, ready smile. He didn't see me at first. He saw two teenagers. One tall boy with a notebook tucked under his arm and a basketball logo on his t-shirt. One girl with paint under her nails and curiosity written all over her face. His smile warmed naturally, the way it had in 100 photos and interviews I'd tried not to look at. "Welcome to Forest Ridge," he started. Then his gaze lifted, landed on me, and everything in his face stopped. "Joyce?" he said, my name landing between us like a dropped plate. For a heartbeat, the whole scene blurred: the lodge, the kids, the counselors. All I saw was him, older and sharper and carrying 15 years I hadn't witnessed. "James," I answered, my voice somehow steady. Beside me, the twins went completely still. "You know each other?" Kelly asked. Before I could form an answer, James's eyes flicked to their faces, first Mark, then Kelly, and something shifted. Mark's height, his jaw, the way he held himself like he was bracing for impact. Kelly's eyes, the color, the shape, the way her mouth quivered right before she asked a hard question. You could almost see him doing the math. 15 years. My age then. Their age now. How old are they? He asked, but his voice was already thin. 15, I said. The number hit him like a silent punch. Mark frowned. "Wait, what's happening?" "Nothing you did," I said quickly. "You're fine. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." My legs felt like they might give out. Amanda, sensing a storm but not its shape, stepped back a little. "I'm going to let you get settled," she said gently. "Daryl will meet you at the cabin path." She called to a counselor who waved from the distance. James dragged his eyes away from the twins and focused on me again. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice rougher now. "Somewhere else, kids," I said, keeping my gaze on him. "Go with Daryl. Get your cabin assignments. I'll meet you before orientation." Kelly hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "You're not in trouble, I promise." Mark looked between us, his brow furrowing. "This isn't bad, is it?" he asked. "It's complicated," I admitted. "But you are not the problem here. Go. I'll be there in a bit." Daryl arrived right then, all easy smiles and jokes, and somehow managed to draw them away with promises of the least haunted cabin. We watched them walk down the path, duffels bouncing against their legs. James's shoulders sagged as soon as they were out of earshot. "By the lake," I said quietly. "If we're doing this, we're not doing it in front of the lodge." He nodded once, sharply. We walked in silence along the pine-lined path until the trees opened and the water appeared, still and reflective. We stopped beside a simple wooden bench. 15, he repeated, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "Joyce? Are they?" "Yes," I said, "they're yours." The words left me with a strange mix of relief and terror. He sank onto the bench like his legs had finally admitted they were tired. "I didn't know," he said, shaking his head. "I swear to you, I didn't know." "I told you," I replied. "You just didn't hear me." He flinched, memories colliding with the way I sounded now. We sat there, the lake in front of us, the camp humming somewhere behind us, and for the first time in 15 years, we picked up the thread of the conversation we'd both run from. He asked questions. I answered. About the pregnancy, about the twins, about Martha and 2 jobs, and the nights I'd almost called his number and then remembered his last words instead. "I'm not ready for this. I can't be tied down right now." He went through denial, then shock, then something heavier that didn't have a neat name. "You never told me," he said at one point, the old defense slipping out without permission. "I did," I said quietly. "You didn't hear me." The words hung there, heavier than anything else we'd said. We both knew this was bigger than an argument. It was the inventory of a life lived without him. Eventually, he looked up from his hands and toward the path our kids had taken. "They're incredible," he said, voice raw. "You did that. They did that too," I replied. "They learned to live without expecting anyone to show up just because they promised they would." He didn't argue. He just looked at the water and let the truth sit between us like another person. Later, when I watched my children thrive at his camp, when I heard them say, "Mr. Forrest really listens," and he's actually nice, I realized something terrifying. They were falling in love with their father before they even knew that's who he was. And as much as it scared me, as much as my own wounds ached, I knew I couldn't let them keep building that admiration on a lie of omission. So when I heard him say, quietly to one of his staff, "I don't know why, but I feel connected to them," I stopped waiting. It was time to tell the truth. Because secrets protect no one in the long run, not the woman who kept them, not the children who lived in their shadow, and not the man who finally has to reckon with what he walked away from. I found them near the field at the end of visiting hours, standing shoulder to shoulder, watching another group of campers play an improvised game with a half-flat ball. "Walk with me," I said. They both heard the tone under the words. The game, the laughter, the rest of the camp, all of it faded a little as they fell into step on either side of me. "Are we in trouble?" Mark asked, half joking, half bracing. "No," I said. "You're not in trouble." We took the now familiar path toward the lake. The trees filtered the light into soft stripes. The air grew cooler and quieter, the camp noise falling away behind us. Kelly hugged her elbows. "Is this about us?" "Or about him?" She didn't say his name. She didn't have one for him yet. "Both," I said. "And about me." We reached the lake and the bench that seemed to have become our confessional. But this time, I didn't sit. James was already there, standing by the water with his hands in his pockets, looking like a man who'd been rehearsing a confession to the trees. He turned when he heard us. His eyes found mine first, asking a question I'd already answered by bringing them here. Then they moved to the twins, and he straightened, shoulders squaring, not in arrogance but in fear. Kelly slowed. "Is this one of those serious talks?" "Yes," I said. "It is." Mark stayed standing. "Say it straight, Mom. Please." I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. "You know there was someone in my life before you," I began. "Someone I cared about. Someone I don't talk about much." They both nodded. "I told you once," I said, "that he wasn't ready, that he chose something else. That was true. But I didn't tell you everything." Kelly's voice was barely above a whisper. "Is he here?" "Yes," I said. Mark's jaw clenched. "Here, like this camp?" "Yes," I said again. Silence fell except for the soft lapping of water against the shore. "I'm going to say something," I continued, "and after I say it, nothing is going to feel the same for a while. That's okay. You don't have to pretend you're fine. You don't have to protect me." I turned fully to James then. He looked like he might break, but he didn't look away. "You said they remind you of someone," I told him. "They do." I glanced back at the twins. "They remind you of someone," I said, my voice shaking but clear, "because they're your children." The words cracked the air. James went utterly still. Mark blinked slowly, like his brain had hit a timeout. Kelly's mouth parted, but no sound came out. For a second, no one moved. Then James did something I didn't expect. He stepped forward and dropped to one knee in front of them. "I need to say this looking up at you," he said softly. Not down. His hands were empty, open on his thighs. "I should have been there," he said. "I wasn't. That's the truth. I don't have a good excuse, and I'm not going to make one." Kelly's voice finally emerged, small and shaky. "Are you saying—" He met her eyes. "I think I might be your father," he said. Then, correcting himself, "No. I know I am. I just didn't know you were out here living an entire life without me." Kelly looked at me, eyes wide and wet. "Mom?" I nodded, my own vision blurring. "Yes," I said. "It's him." Mark's jaw worked like he was biting back words. "So all this time," he said quietly, "you've been— what? Playing camp hero while we thought you were just some generous guy?" "Mark," I said, reaching toward him. He stepped back, just enough that my hand caught air. "This is not your fault," I said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't drive him away. You didn't make me keep this from you. These were our choices. Mine. His. Adults, yeah," he said, eyes bright. "And we're the ones sitting here with our lives turned inside out." Kelly scrubbed at her cheeks with the heel of her hand, as if she could erase the tears. "How long did you know?" she asked me. "That he was who he is?" "Here at camp," I answered. "Since the email. Before that, I always knew who he was, what he'd become. And you sent us anyway," she whispered. "I sent you to an opportunity," I said. "I told myself it was about you, not him. I thought I could keep those two things separate. I was wrong. What about you?" Mark asked, turning on James. "When did you know we were yours?" "The first day," James said. "Not in a full way. Not in a responsible way. I saw your ages, your faces, and my brain started shouting numbers and memories I didn't want to listen to. By the time I talked to your mother by this lake, I couldn't deny it anymore." Kelly's voice cracked. "Did you ever think about us? Even as a hypothetical?" He swallowed hard. "I told myself there might have been a child," he said. "Once. I told myself if it had been real, I would have known. That she would have insisted. That there would have been no way for me to miss it. It was a lie, I told myself, so I wouldn't have to look at what I did." "Congratulations," Mark said. "You're very good at lying to yourself." I am, James said. I was. And now I'm here, and I don't get to hide behind I didn't know anymore. I didn't know because I didn't listen. That's on me. He looked at both of them, eyes glassy. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said. I'm not asking you to call me Dad. I'm asking you to know that you were never the mistake. Ivas. Silence settled over us like a heavy blanket. Kelly's shoulders shook once, then again. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now, she said. That's okay, I answered immediately. You don't have to know. You just have to feel whatever you feel. There's no right or wrong way for your heart to react to this. Mark stared at the ground. Why weren't you there? He said, but this time he wasn't looking at James. He was looking at me. The question hurt more than any accusation. I was there, I said quietly. Every day, every night, every school form, every scraped knee, I was there. I just wasn't honest with you about who he was. I thought I was protecting you. I see now that I was also protecting myself. That doesn't make it better, he said. I know, I replied. It just makes it true. He nodded once, lips pressed together. James stayed on his knees. If you hate me, he said, you're not wrong. If you don't want to see me again after this camp, I will respect that. I'll still do what I can for you from a distance. But I won't push my way into your life because I'm late and suddenly ready. Kelly sniffed. You own the camp we're standing in, she said. You're not exactly distant. A shaky, almost laugh flickered in her voice, then died. I can own things, he said. That's always been easy for me. The hard part is learning how to be present without controlling everything. Mark finally lifted his eyes. Are you going to stick around? He asked. After this. Not for camp, for us. I want to, James said. More than I've wanted anything in a long time. But that decision can't come from me alone this time. It has to come from all three of you. He looked at me when he said it. I exhaled slowly. For now, I said, we survive this summer. We tell the truth. We answer questions. We don't rush forgiveness. We let the dust settle where it wants to. The twins looked at each other, that silent twin conversation sparking between them. We're not promising anything, Mark said. You shouldn't, I replied. But we're not running either, Kelly added, her voice a little steadier. Not yet. That was the first mercy they offered him. And maybe in a small way to me too. Because despite the shock, the anger, the betrayal of finding out your father has been standing in front of you as a stranger, they stayed on that path. They didn't turn their backs and walk away. Sometimes the bravest thing a child can do is simply not leave. The weeks after the truth came out didn't look like a neat after picture. They looked like bruises changing color day by day, hurting in different places every time you moved. Word of what happened by the lake didn't spread through camp in whispers and gossip. Not because it wasn't dramatic, but because the people who'd seen the edges of it, Michael, Amanda, a couple of counselors understood that this wasn't a story for anyone else to tell. From the outside, life at Forest Ridge kept its rhythm. Morning announcements on the lodge steps. Bell for meals. Water splashing at the lake. Sneakers squeaking on the courts. Inside our strange, newly exposed little family, everything had shifted half an inch to the left. Mark didn't stop going to activities. He showed up for every game, every drill, every challenge. But where he had once called out, "Hey, mister, Forrest, watch this," he now played like James wasn't there at all, even when he knew he was. Kelly didn't stop visiting the art building. Her sketchbook filled even faster now. Only some pages disappeared under fresh layers of charcoal, as if she were burying drawings she wasn't ready to look at yet. James didn't disappear. He didn't suddenly become the center of everything either. He walked a careful line between present and respectful distance. He still came to the courts. He just didn't stand so close to the boundary line. He stayed back, leaning against the fence, arms crossed, eyes on the game but not yelling instructions unless a counselor invited him. He still visited the art room. He just didn't move from table to table like a proud curator. He picked one corner, watched quietly, and only spoke when someone asked him a question. He still sat in on leadership sessions. He just let the kids talk more. The first real test came 2 days after the reveal. I arrived mid-afternoon, pretending I was just there to drop off a forgotten hoodie. The truth was, my chest hadn't stopped feeling tight since that "I think I might be your father" moment, and I needed to see, with my own eyes, whether my children were still standing. I found Mark at the far court, alone, taking shot after shot. Dribble, step, release, swish, or not. He didn't flinch when another ball bounced near his feet. He just nudged it aside with his shoe and kept going. From the corner of my eye, I noticed James standing near the gate watching, hands in his pockets. He hadn't announced himself. He hadn't called Mark's name. I stayed by the bleachers where they wouldn't see me and listened. "You know that shot's better when you're not angry at the rim," James said finally. Mark caught the rebound and tucked the ball under his arm. "You spying on my technique now?" he asked. "Hard to spy when you're making that much noise," James answered, nodding toward the ball. "Your dribble's practically yelling." Mark snorted despite himself. "You here to give me pointers?" he asked. "Or a heartfelt apology on behalf of all deadbeat dads?" "That was under the belt," James said quietly. "But accurate." He walked closer, but not too close. Close enough to talk without shouting. Far enough that Mark could still decide to walk away. "I'm here," James said, "to answer any question you have. Not to fix things with a few drills." Mark bounced the ball once, twice, staring at the ground. "Okay," he said. "Then answer this. If you had known for sure if Mom had looked you in the eyes and said, 'I am pregnant, these are your kids,' would you have stayed?" James didn't rush. "I want to say yes," he admitted. "I want to say I would have dropped everything and become the man I needed to be. But the truth is, the version of me back then was very good at running. I might have still run. The difference now is that I can't pretend I didn't know who I was hurting. So the answer is, you don't know," Mark said. "The honest answer," James replied, "is that I failed you before you were even born. And that failure doesn't go away just because I want to be different now." Mark's jaw tightened. "Then why are you here?" he asked. "Now, why bother?" "Because the man I am now can't live with walking away again," James said. "Because every time you ask me a question like that and I stay, I get a little further from the man who left your mother at that coffee shop." Mark looked up, studying his face like he was testing for cracks. "And if I don't forgive you?" he asked. "Then I'll keep showing up anyway," James said, "at the distance you set. Forgiveness isn't a ticket I can demand. It's something I have to be worth." They stood there for a second, two stubborn silhouettes against the bright court. Then Mark tossed him the ball. "Fine," he said. "If you're going to lurk, you might as well be useful. My footwork's trash on my left side." James caught the ball, surprise flickering over his face before he smoothed it out. "Now that," he said, "I can help with." It wasn't a miracle. It was a drill. But it was more than what they'd had a week before. Kelly's first test came in the art room. I stepped in one rainy afternoon to drop off extra sketch pads and found her at the back table, head bent, hand moving quickly across the paper. James sat across from her, elbows on the table, not touching anything. The other kids had drifted to other corners, leaving the two of them in a quiet bubble. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "My brain," she answered. He tilted his head. "That seems ambitious." She huffed a tiny laugh. "Not literally. Just how it feels lately." He looked at the page. She'd drawn a tangle of paths, some leading to light, some to dark scribbles, some looping back on themselves. Small figures stood at intersections, some facing forward, some sideways, some with their backs turned. "This one?" he asked, pointing at a small dark shape near the edge. "Which part is that?" "That's anger," she said. "It keeps pretending it's not there." "And this?" he asked, tapping a lighter, messy swirl. "Hope," she said. "It keeps showing up where it's not invited." He swallowed. "Which one am I?" he asked quietly. She stared at the page for a long beat. "I don't know yet," she said. "That's the problem." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." He didn't try to tell her who he thought he was in her drawing. He didn't try to convince her he belonged in the Hope corner. He sat there and let her confusion exist. After a moment, she reached for a different charcoal stick and added a small, open doorway at the top of the page. "What's that?" he asked. "Options," she said. "For later." He smiled, just a little. "For you or for me?" "For all of us," she replied. That was the first time she'd included him in us. I watched all of this from the edges. From the corner of the court. From the doorway of the art room. From the hill above the lake where they sometimes sat together, talking in low voices I couldn't quite hear. I didn't hover over every interaction, but I checked in enough to see a pattern forming. Jags didn't miss difficult moments anymore. When Mark lost his temper at a missed shot and stormed off the court, James didn't roll his eyes and walk away. He followed at a distance and sat on the bleachers nearby, saying nothing until Mark was ready to speak. When Kelly snapped at a friend and then spent the evening in the art room looking guilty, James didn't tell her she was overreacting. He simply said, "You're allowed to have bad days." Even here. He didn't pull out his wallet once. No grand gifts. No promises of cars or colleges or trips. He asked questions like, what do you want to do after this? What scares you the most about letting people close? What do you wish I had been there to see? And then he listened to the answers without defending himself. One evening near the end of the session, I stood with him at the edge of the field, watching the twins jogging back from the lake with a group of friends, hair damp, laughter easy. They're letting you in, I said quietly, in their own way. They're testing me, he corrected gently, and they have every right to. You're still here, I pointed out. I told you, he said, eyes on them. I'm done running. He turned toward me then. Joyce, he said, I know I don't get to ask you this, not really, but I need to anyway. I raised an eyebrow. That's a promising start. He smiled, but it faded quickly. Is there any chance, he asked softly, for us? He didn't say for us as a family or as a couple or as anything else. Just us, the woman he left and the man who walked back in. Two people who had somehow raised a pair of remarkable teenagers, one in the light, one in the shadows. I don't know yet, I said honestly. I'm still walking around the mess you made, the mess I made, trying not to trip over the sharp parts. I can help clean it up, he offered, not by pretending it's not there, just by being willing to get cut too. I took a breath. I'm not going to give you an answer tonight, I said. That wouldn't be real, but I'm not saying no anymore. That's more than I've given you in 15 years. He nodded, accepting the boundary like a man who finally understood that not no was its own fragile kind of hope. Down the field, Mark shouted something that made Kelly throw her head back laughing. We both turned toward the sound. Whatever happens with us, I said, they come first. Otherwise. Agreed, he replied. And as the camp slid into its final days, packing lists, last games, art projects drying on tables, we all lived in that uncertain space together. Not enemies. Not quite anything else yet. Just four people trying to learn whether love, once broken, could be rebuilt into something honest enough to stand on. The last night of camp didn't feel real at first. All day, the kids moved like they were stuck between wanting time to slow down and wanting the goodbyes to just happen so they could stop dreading them. Cabin doors stayed open. Suitcases sat half-packed. Every conversation sounded like it had a second layer underneath. I'll text you really meant, please don't forget me. By the time the sun started to slide down behind the trees, the staff had the closing campfire ready. Lanterns hung from low branches, throwing circles of soft light along the path to the hill overlooking the lake. The fire pit at the center burned bright and steady, sparks jumping into a sky slowly filling with stars. Kids spread out on blankets and logs, shoulders bumping, knees touching, clinging to the sense of being together just a little longer. I found Mark and Kelly halfway around the circle on a shared blanket. Hey, I said, easing down beside them. Room for one more emotionally unstable adult? Kelly leaned into me. Always, Mark sniffed, pretending he was just cold. Counselors started with the silly songs loud, chaotic, reassuringly off-key. Voices cracked. Kids shouted the words like they were trying to carve them into the night. Then the mood shifted. The guitar softened. The circle quieted. Michael stepped forward, hands in his pockets, looking at the campers the way a gardener might look at a field of plants he'd watched grow all season. He talked about bravery, about kindness, about the small choices no one sees, about the way they'd shown up for each other in the mess of first impressions and hurt feelings and homesickness. Then he stepped back and glanced at James. In another life, James would have walked into a moment like this with a speech ready to go, numbers, metaphors, a closing line designed to get applause. Tonight, when he stepped forward, he didn't look like a founder giving a keynote. He looked like a man trying very hard not to waste any more time pretending he was above anyone. I've spent most of my life talking about goals, he said. Growth, success. All the words people put on magazine covers when they like you. A small ripple of laughter moved through the staff. This summer, he went on, I watched a lot of you do something harder than hit a target or win a game. I watched you apologize. Start over. Try again after you got it wrong in front of everyone. He paused, his eyes moving over the circle. That takes more courage than any business deal I've ever done, he said. If you can carry that into your life outside these trees, you'll be stronger than most of the adults you know. He didn't name us. He didn't hint at anything, but I felt it anyway. And to the people, he added, voice a little rougher, who let me be here with you, even when I didn't deserve that chance at first. Thank you. He didn't look at me directly when he said it. He didn't have to. When he sat back down, no one clapped. They didn't need to. The night eased into its softer shape. Kids drifted between groups, trading inside jokes and promises, wiping away tears they pretended were from smoke. Eventually, Mark and Kelly migrated down the hill closer to the fire with their friends, leaving me near the back, standing where the lantern light started to fade into darkness. "Too much warmth for you down there?" James asked, appearing at my side. "Someone has to supervise from the shadows," I said. We stood together, looking out over the circle of kids and counselors and shared history. "They're incredible," he said quietly, watching the twins laugh with their cabin mates. "All three of you." "I won't argue with that," I replied. The fire cracked. Someone started another song. Somebody else cried quietly into their sleeve. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" I asked. "For not making it worse," he said. "You could have. You had every right to. You could have turned them against me with a sentence. You didn't. I turned you into a ghost instead," I said. "For a long time." "That was still kinder than I earned," he replied. We were quiet for a moment. "I didn't stop caring, I said, surprising myself. "About you. I tried to. I thought hate would be easier, but I never stopped caring. That's why it hurt that much." He looked at me, and there was no triumph in his face. Just something like grief. "I thought you hated me," he admitted. "I did," I said. "Sometimes." That was still a kind of caring. Down by the fire, Kelly glanced up the hill and spotted us. She nudged Mark, nodding in our direction. They watched us in that way teenagers do, trying not to look like they're watching. "What do you think they see right now?" James asked, his voice low. "Two adults who finally stopped pretending nothing happened," I said. "That's a start." He took a breath. "I meant what I told you before," he said. "I'm not leaving again." The words were simple, no flourish, no dramatic pause. If he'd said them years ago, I would have braced for the betrayal. Now, after these weeks of watching him show up when it was inconvenient, answer ugly questions, stay through anger and silence, I realized something that startled me. I believed him. Camp ended the way most seasons do, under bright lights, with lost socks and forms to sign, and people pretending this was just another Saturday. Cars filled the gravel lot. Trunks yawned open. Parents waved, hugged, checked off lists. "Don't cry," Kelly whispered to her friend Lena, who was already blotting her eyes with the corner of her t-shirt. "You first," Lena sniffed. Mark came barreling toward me with his duffel over one shoulder, Kelly half jogging to keep up. "You survived," I said, opening my arms. "Barely," Mark replied, squeezing me in a hug that hurt in the best way. "I think I grew 2 inches." "You absolutely did," I said. "My back can confirm it." Kelly wrapped herself around us both. "We did things, Mom," she said into my shoulder. "Real things." "I know," I murmured. "I saw." We loaded the bags into the trunk, falling into the old rhythm heaviest things first. Kelly insisting on keeping her sketchbook with her, Mark pretending to be in charge of logistics. When we slammed the trunk shut, they both fell quiet. He was standing near the lodge with Colin and Michael, talking, gesturing once or twice, but mostly listening. He looked different than the man in the glossy brochures. Less perfectly composed. More human. "Are you going to say goodbye?" I asked. "To who?" Mark said. "Friends or him?" "Both," I answered. They traded a look. "You come with," Kelly decided. "We're not doing this solo." We walked over together. Colin spotted us first. "Ah, the Barbaras," he said, smiling. "We're sending some good ones home today." "You're keeping some too," I replied. "Every story you crammed into their heads." Colin smiled, then drifted away with Michael, giving us space without making it obvious. James stood there, hands in his pockets. "You all packed?" he asked. "Pretty much," Mark said. "We're emotionally unpacked," Kelly added. "But that might take another 15 years, so..." James gave a small, understanding smile. "I wanted to say something before you left," he said. "To all three of you." We waited. "I told my staff," he went on, "and a few parents who needed to know why I'll be around differently from now on, that you're my children. Not special scholarship kids, not a random family I like. My children. I'm not hiding that anymore." Kelly's eyes widened slightly. "You told people that?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Because I don't want you to have to explain me with half-truths. If I'm going to be in your life, people can know why. That's part of showing up. And if they ask awkward questions," Mark said. "I answer them," James replied. "You don't have to. You owe no one your pain as a story." That mattered more than he knew. "So what now?" Mark asked. "Real life. No camp schedule. No structured feelings time by the lake. Now," James said, "I show up when and where I say I will. At games if you want me there. Art shows, school meetings, the boring stuff, the fun stuff, the in-between stuff. Not as a guest star, as part of the cast. How big that part is, that's up to you." He looked at me then. "And co-parenting," he added quietly, "if you're still willing to let me try." I thought of all the versions of this moment I'd rehearsed in my head over the years. Most of them ended with me slamming a door. Instead, I heard myself say, "We can start with calendars and boundaries." His shoulders loosened like he'd been bracing for a no. "That's more than I deserve," he said. "But I'm grateful." We walked back toward the car together. "Are you driving back alone?" Kelly asked him. "I have another car here," he said. "But if you're okay with it, I'd like to follow you. Make sure you get home safe." The irony of that now after everything didn't escape any of us. "Convoy?" Mark said. "We've never had a personal escort before. Don't let it go to your head," I said. "We're still stopping at the same cheap gas stations." They both smiled. We got into the car. As I pulled out of the lot, I checked the rear view. His dark car eased in behind us, not too close, not too far. Present, patient. The drive home felt different this time. The road was the same. The little towns we passed were the same. The half-faded billboards were the same. But there was one more car in our mirror. And whether I liked it or not, there was one more person in our story. "Do you think this is real?" Kelly asked at one point, staring out her window. "Him, this version. I think people can change," I said. "Not everyone does, not all the way. But I think when someone is willing to hurt with you instead of just hurting you, that's something." Deep, Mark said. Mom dropping TED talks on the highway. He was joking, but his fingers were tapping the edge of his seat with restless energy. "Do you want him at your first home game?" I asked gently. He took a long time to answer. "If he says he's coming," Mark said finally, "and he actually shows up, maybe. That's not a yes," I said. "I know," he replied. "It's not a no either." We pulled into our street as the sky turned that soft blue that only shows up on tired evenings. Our building looked exactly the same. Somehow it felt different. I parked in our usual spot. James pulled in a few spaces behind us. He got out and stood there for a second, looking up at the windows like they were a new kind of skyscraper he hadn't learned how to navigate yet. "This is home," I said, more to myself than to him. "It's good," he said. "It's real." We carried bags up the stairs, me the twins, and for the first time, him. He didn't try to take everything. He took what we let him. At the door, I hesitated for a beat, keys in hand. Then I unlocked it and pushed it open. "Come in," I said. He stepped over the threshold like it was sacred ground. Inside, the apartment smelled like the lavender cleaner Martha favored. Her touch lingered in the neat stack of mail, the wiped-down counters. "You must be James," she said, appearing in the doorway with a dish towel over her shoulder. He straightened. "Oh, you must be Martha. I've heard a lot about you." "Funny," she said. "I can't say the same." He took that hit without flinching. "Fair," he replied. She stared at him for a long moment, then turned to the twins. "Showers," she said briskly. "You smell like wood smoke and feelings." They groaned but obeyed. Suddenly it was just the two of us in the small living room that had seen every version of my exhaustion. "This is smaller than what you're used to," I said. "It's full," he answered. "That's better than big." We stood there, surrounded by the quiet evidence of the life I'd built without him. School photos on the wall. A lopsided drawing of the three of us on the fridge. A stack of shoes by the door, none of them his. "Do you want me to go?" he asked softly. "Right now, I mean. I don't want to crowd you. Or them. I want you," I said slowly, "to stay. For dinner." His eyes widened slightly, then softened. "I can do that," he said. "I can even cook." "We'll order something," I said. "Let's not make this night more experimental than it already is." We ate around the small table, bumping knees, interrupting each other's stories, slipping into a rhythm that felt almost normal. The twins told him about their favorite moments at camp. They still tripped over what to call him. He didn't correct them. When he finally stood at the door later, shoes on, keys in hand, he looked at me like he was memorizing the way I looked in my own doorway. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me in, even this much." "It's not everything," I replied. "I know," he said, "but it's something, and I will not take it for granted." He stepped out into the hallway, then turned back. "I'm not asking for an answer," he said. "Not tonight, not about us." I just need you to know that whatever that answer is one day, I'm still going to be at the games. The art shows, the hard nights. That part isn't conditional. I'm not saying yes, I told him. A small smile tugged at his mouth. I figured, he said. I'm not saying no, I added. He exhaled, something easing in his shoulders. That, he said quietly, is more than I ever thought I'd get. He left then, footsteps echoing down the stairwell. I stood in the doorway a moment longer, listening to the quiet. Behind me, Mark and Kelly hovered in the hallway. Do you think he'll come back? Kelly asked. If he meant what he said, I replied, he will. And if he doesn't, Mark asked, then you'll know who he still is, I said. And we'll go on. We already know how. They both nodded. Later that night, I watched them walk a few steps ahead of me on the sidewalk outside our building. No camp schedule, no counselors, just the streetlights and the familiar cracks in the pavement. They were laughing about something small and ridiculous. Their shoulders brushed. They were still in all the ways that mattered, okay? Beside me, there was an empty space. Once, I would have insisted it stay empty forever. Now I could imagine someone walking there. Not as a savior, not as a replacement for everything he'd missed. As a man choosing, one ordinary day at a time, to earn a place in a story he should have been in from the beginning. Second chances aren't shiny. They're quiet. They're made of calendars and show-ups and sitting in small rooms while people ask you hard questions. And as I watch my twins move forward, laughing in the streetlight glow, I realize something. I didn't know yet what my final answer to him would be. But for the first time in 15 years, the future didn't feel like something I had to survive alone. It felt like something we might, if he kept choosing it, learn to build together.